In my case, for my everyday, I use smartphone. For social media, I use smartphone. Videos and photos, I use smartphone. I edit on smartphone, photographs. I use Photoshop Pro if I want to give a unique edit. If not, I just upload to Instagram and edit on Instagram using the editor embedded on Instagram. For me, that's more than enough. So when do I use this? Yeah. The major difference is the size of the sensor where the image is printed, and that technically will limit how big you can print the image. Point number one. If you have a small sensor for as much resolution as you have, the smaller the file will gonna be in terms of large edge, pixels, length. Of course, the resolution is a number per pixel, so you have a relation of between the resolution pixel per inch and the actual size of the image, one-on-one image. We're not going into very much detail right now. What you need to know is, of course, if you have a bigger film, a bigger sensor, you will have more information and it will be easier to print a bigger image. That gives us a unique advantage when we are using bigger sensors. And of course, lately, in my last sessions, I used medium formats, and that's a huge difference. We can go even higher with large format cameras, where the negative is a sheet of paper this size. Well, not paper, metal sheet or whatever. This size. Medium format is this size. Cropped sensor this size. Smartphone has a sensor this size. So that's a big difference. That's why technically for commercial photography, for example, even if you have all the setup and perspective right, etc., and the light right, and you use a smartphone, you'll be limited because you cannot print those images in large format prints. If you want to print a billboard, print an image to put in a building or something like that, you can't. You're limited. If you print it, the image is going to be blurry. So you lose all quality. Of course, there is a notion of perception of how far or how close you're seeing the image. You have like a perfect distance from the print, but that's another topic. Advantage number one is you can increase the size of your prints with large formats. Advantage number one on smartphones, they are very portable and you're very effective. The workflow is very quick, and it's easy to take a picture, to edit, and to upload with a smartphone. Using this camera for social media, I have to upload the files. Yes, I can use Wi-Fi on modern cameras, but I'll have somehow to transfer the file by wire, by SD card, by Wi-Fi, transfer the file to a workstation where I can edit the images. I can eventually transfer to my iPad or smartphone, edit and upload on my computer, but it takes a little bit more time. So, big advantage for smartphone. It's very quick in terms of process. This one gives more quality. Special in the special case that you need bigger prints. Another big advantage I've been talking about, especially regarding medium format cameras, because I'm so in love with that, is the color depth. In terms of black and white only, not to increase the confusion about this, in terms of black and white, Ansel Adams described the zone system. From pitch black to full white, we divide the gray scale into 10 sectors, for example, and we say that we have a 10 f-stop range. Now we can divide it in 20 sectors, for example. In terms of color, if you change your computer to one of the primary color modes we had on computers, the 256 color mode, where you don't have gradients of colors, you have one color to the other, one color to, how to say this, the transition between colors was not very smooth because we only have 256 colors or bit to represent the full color range. Then when we upgraded to 16 million different bits instead of 256, now we have millions of zones of pixels of range, so we can create a smoother transition between the colors. Coming to black and white, imagine that we have, instead of 10 different intensities of grays, the f-stop model of Ansel Adams. In terms of computing, we transform those 10 f-stop range in millions of bits range of samples that we have to describe that color. That's why we can have smooth transitions between the blacks and the whites, the gray zone. And what happens in the medium format sensors, or the bigger the format, the more we will notice this, especially in large format. It's amazing the result of large format camera, and there is no digital yet as good as an analog large format camera in terms of results, in terms of color depth or f-stop range. Because the bigger the sensor, the more information we have, the more we know about the transition. So when we see a picture on screen or printed, coming from a large format or medium format, comparing to a smartphone one, let's forget now the digital manipulation, because those have very good photos as well. The transition between darks and grays, the shadow zone, is really amazing and gives us a unique perception of depth. And that's very important because photography is a 2D bidimensional world that we are trying to manipulate through perception, that it is a 3D world. We are using depth of field, perspective, etc. to give that perception. And the quality of the shadows and the transition between the darks and the highlights on big sensors is amazing. I'm not talking about resolution. An old medium format camera with 15 megapixel will still deliver excellent results comparing to modern age smartphones. Why? Because the smartphone has a small sensor and the medium format camera has a big sensor. Now, in terms of resolution, the bigger the sensor and the bigger the resolution, it's all related, we can have bigger prints. But generally speaking, keep this in mind. Limitation in terms of size of printing, size of final file, high quality transitions from darks to highlights, poor transitions, poor performance in low light situations, better performance on low light situations, but still not very good. This has the manual shutter settings, for example. I can leave the shutter open for 1 minute, camera set on a tripod, and in a low light situation, very low light situation, I still can have a sharp image. I put my smartphone on a tripod, I press the timer not to eliminate any vibrations when I press the screen. I took a photograph, and I cannot reach the quality of this in a low light situation, period, because of the technical limitations of the equipment. That's another point. Let's see good points I can't carry these everywhere. No one asks me or tells me anything. I'm taking photos anywhere. Eventually doing vlogs. When I'm doing vlogs, a security guard, if I'm in a private location, can eventually request me to stop. If I'm photographing with a professional camera on the streets, for example in London, it gets more tricky to take pictures. If you put a tripod, and if you have an artificial light on the tripod, that means trouble to you, basically, because you have to have a license to photograph in the majority of locations in London, for example. You have a smartphone, you can take pictures. You can take your pictures, and I'm still broadcasting. Yes, I am. Sorry about that. So you are in London, you can use a smartphone and you take pictures, and you can be very discreet. It's more difficult to be discreet with this, especially if you have a zoom lens or something like that. It gets more tricky. Some locations in London require, or the majority of locations in London require a special permission that you have to request to each local borough of London. So you have to plan your shoot in advance. You cannot just you cannot just do it by intuition or by motivation. You really have to plan, because you have to request permission weeks before the shoot. You cannot decide the same day, because it's a beautiful day, got nothing to do. Okay, let's take some photos, some good photos outside in London. Let's take our tripod and our strobe and take some amazing pictures. No, bad idea. The cops can approach you, or any other security guard or person, and politely request ask you to stop what you're doing, and eventually they can fine you. So it's not very good. The other problem when you request permission is that usually you have to pay fees, services, etc., just because you are photographing using a camera and a tripod for small crews. If you have more than 5 people around you, it's no longer considered a small crew, and you have to request another type of permission, and things start to get very complicated. And it's not difficult to have a crew bigger than 5. Photographer, model, makeup, photographer assistant, stylist, boom. You have 5. You want to have someone capturing the backstage activity and the scenes and the behind the scenes, taking video and stills. Might need someone taking care of logistics and equipment. The model may need some help or assistance. You may need another photographer or another assistant photographer for the light equipment, for example. You know, I've never worked with teams bigger than 5, but it's easy to get 5 people. Meaning that in London, you gather with your friends, you want to take some shots, and you are a pro, you know how to use a strobe, you want to use a strobe and a tripod and a professional camera to take those cool pictures of you and your friends, or just for a model, or doing a job that you got hired the day before, and you are screwed. Or you know London very, very well, and you know where to shoot without needing those permissions, or you know how to run and how to deal with that later via email and etc. with the boroughs, and avoiding fines or paying fines, but you'll risk your reputation, your professional image will be at risk, etc. So yeah, it's an interesting topic. London is just an example. I recommend you, to any city you go, make sure, I do that by experience. To every new city I go, I send emails to the council, to the police stations. I ask questions. I ask if I can shoot, if I need a special license, where to request it, who needs to know I'm there. To the police, I ask if it's safe, it's or if it's not safe, the locations I want to photograph. I ask for recommendations, etc., etc. That means planning. So we photographers know that going somewhere to take some pictures is not like going to a party, to a friend, and I've got a camera, smile, cheese, you know. No, when we take things seriously, we have to plan, and this takes lots of time. And of course, we have to invest because we want to take the best out of it. Because we are using this type of equipment, even if we are using automatic mode, I'll never use it in automatic mode, but that's just me. I don't blame anyone who uses automatic mode. What matters is the final result. How do you get there? It's only your unique way. When you get things professional, I do believe that we got to be respected as such. And the truth is sometimes we do have to go through a lot of pain to be able to create a shoot just to capture those images. So sometimes the smartphone is good enough. If you are working for a client, if the resolution that your smartphone gives is enough and the quality is enough for your client, why not using the smartphone? If you are photographing with natural light or continuous light, we don't have yet a way to communicate the strobe with the smartphone. Soon that will be possible, and that will create a big revolution in the photography world to activate an artificial light source with the smartphone, like we do with those cameras, using the hot shoe, for example, or by wire. The moment we can do this using a smartphone is going to create quite a big revolution in the photography world, I believe. I would love to know your thoughts about this topic. I think it's very interesting. You just have to keep going with the flow and not being stuck into a certain type of camera because I love the camera. Oh, I love so much this camera. I'm going to use this camera forever. No. We have to adapt. Sometimes I use a bigger camera. I've used, and it was so good, medium format cameras in my last 3 shoots. I planned for it and I requested. I've used it, but I don't own it. I don't have it. They are £50,000 cameras. I'm not going to have £50,000 camera there if I don't know how to take the best out of it. I don't have enough clients, enough business to make up for it. I'll be losing tons of money that I don't have, so no. And that's it for another Friday Talk. If you have any questions, post below. If you have any comments, post below. I'd love to know, when do you use a smartphone? When do you use a professional camera? And how? Any interesting and funny stories that you have, please share. I'd love to know that. And with that, guys, by the way, I'm using webcam on my laptop. I'm not using any of this. It's quicker to use my webcam on my laptop than plugging this in and transferring the file and connecting YouTube Live, etc. I can plug this in my computer, I can record it, but it's more difficult to go live with this. I can go live with this, but it takes lots of resources in my computer, and I need the resources to have a better streaming. I don't want my CPU or memory to be occupied with extra stuff. Oh. Oh no, this camera. Listen. Batteries? Oh, no, the batteries are in the back. Yes, that will be a topic for another video. That can be the topic for next week, Friday Talk. Always have your batteries charged. I have all the batteries charged in my backpack. I have the batteries ready, and I have the batteries of the strobe as well ready, and I have everything batteries fully charged on my backpack and off camera, off equipment, because they will discharge, lose power if they are inside equipment. I remove the lens all the time as well, and I my camera.